Welcome back to Paper Mountains Podcast. We're here with a Traveling Wellburys edition. As always, accompanying me, your host, Jake Welly, my wife, Morgan.
Me.
Welcome. Always has the best insight and the best stories from our traveling. So this is why she always has to be here with me.
Do I?
Yeah. As long as we're not too sleep deprived, we've been wanting to do this episode for many months now.
It's been a while.
Other priorities are taking a precedence. Every time we get a chance, we feel too tired. And we're definitely not strict on making sure that we try to release an episode bi-weekly, monthly, bi-monthly. I don't know the last time.
Quarterly.
Yeah. This is a 4-episode-a-year podcast. Whenever we get the chance. But we wanted to come down and sit down. This was appropriate time to, we thought, talk about our experience with traveling Ecuador. We wanted to share some of our insight and our time, our stories from there, and just share a little bit about a country of what we kind of thought was underappreciated whenever we were traveling and making our plans through South America. Ecuador was easily overshadowed by its neighboring countries, Peru, Colombia, Brazil. Everybody talks about them, but Ecuador kind of gets lost in the shadows.
Yeah, I mean, I can say even for us, we never thought about going to Ecuador. It just happened because we had cheap plane tickets there. So it's like, oh, yeah, let's go to Ecuador, I guess.
As much of our travel revolves around saving money as much as possible.
Yeah, where are the cheapest plane tickets to next?
That was kind of the consensus of our areas of where we would go to on our route was, what's the cheapest place to fly to?
Yeah, let's look at the flight map. What's cheap? Okay, we're going to buy those tickets.
But as I said, we're sleep deprived. We both have cold brews on this afternoon. We have Naomi down for a nap, and we said, today's the day. We're going to finally record it.
It's the day. Our daughter will finally nap on her own without us being there, so fingers crossed.
Yeah.
We can get through this.
It's
questionable.
Don't speak too soon. But thank you for everybody who's listening. If you are following along on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, just give the podcast a follow. I know I just said that this isn't a routine show with a set schedule, but we do make them sometimes. So if you want to tune in, it helps just following the show, whatever you are listening or watching the podcast. So thank you for tuning in. Morgan, are you ready to go in and talk about some of our stories from Ecuador?
I think so. I think I'm ready.
All right.
It will refresh my memory as we go.
Yep. Yeah.
Because I don't think we've said it's now been over a year ago since we were in Ecuador. But that's okay.
Yes.
Better late than never.
This will give us a little bit of a time to relive some of our experiences as well as we tried to remember and recall everything that happened.
Yeah.
And so Ecuador, it's an overshadowed country. And when we were reading about it before we went there, and then what we experienced was that in this little country, it actually has 4 main kind of natural components that they categorize that are all present here. The Andean mountain with the volcanoes, the Amazon rainforest, the coastline, Pacific coast? No. Yes. Yeah. The Pacific coast and the Galapagos Islands for kind of its unique environment. We experienced 3 of the 4. Yes. We didn't go to the Galapagos Islands.
We went to the poor man's Galapagos because, like we said, we go to the cheap places. So we didn't make it to the Galapagos, but we'll get into that later probably.
I think an appropriate place to start would be at the bottom of our favorite experiences, and that would be almost getting robbed in Quito. I think this would be an appropriate...
Wait, that's the bottom for you?
I think that's the worst thing that happened, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so, Morgan, you read about this beforehand that got us ready for it. So can you go into the story of us almost getting robbed in Quito and what ensued there?
That's one thing I always make sure to try to do, especially when we're going to a city, is like research, like, okay, like safe areas to go to, etc. Like just research about the city, things we should know. And I had read that Quito is big for like scammers. And there's like multiple things they'll do, but one of them was like, they called it like the bird poop trick, I think. And what they do is they'll like spray like a fake bird poop on you, and then they'll like be nice and try to pretend like, oh, a bird pooped on you, we're going to clean it up. And then they'll rob you blind. They'll steal your bags. They'll steal everything you have. And then they're gone before you even realize what's happening. So luckily we were like sitting in our apartment the one night, and I was reading this to Jake like, oh, hey, here's something we need to watch out for. I don't know. It was like 1 or 2 days later. Mm-hmm. And we're out walking in like a main touristy area by the Basilica. Midday, yeah. And we're just trying to walk to a cafe that's over there that I wanted to go to. And I felt something hit my arm wet. We were wearing all like long sleeves except for me. So if it wouldn't have hit my arm, I wouldn't have even noticed it. And then I was like, what the? And I looked and then like instantly realized what was going on, thankfully. And then we realized there were like people following us behind us and then people coming from the other direction. So we were like, walk, let's get out of here. Like, don't even stop. So we just started like walking faster. And then we heard them start yelling at us like, sir, like trying to get our attention to, you know, tell us that they were going to help us. So we just kind of booked it off. And like, I know you were paying attention behind us more so you saw the whole thing.
Yeah. So kind of a fast pace of events of us realizing that we were kind of sprayed with poop or shit or whatever it was. It smelled horrible.
Oh yeah. Whatever the mixture was, like, I don't know if it had some sort of feces in it, but it smelled so bad.
And instantly from you reading about this exact scenario 2 days earlier, it was like, okay, we need to get out of the situation because I turned around and there's 2 people trailing us. There's people crossing the road approaching us. And as Morgan just said, we just booked it up faster pace. Mm-hmm. And they were older men who weren't overly ambitious about trying to rob us. They wanted it to be an easy getaway.
They want it easy. And like, they're not going to cause a scene doing it. They want to fool you.
So they were, like Morgan said, they were trying to fool us into help. Like, hey, a bird pooped on you. We're going to help you. There's a public restroom over this way. All lies, of course. And they were trying to get me to take off my backpack. Mm-hmm. And they were just going to take the backpack. So as Morgan said, we just kept walking forward. We didn't turn around when they were yelling at us. We were like, this is a scam. Yeah.
Luckily, the cafe we were going to is pretty much around the block. So we're like, just get to the cafe. Let's go there.
And we got to the top of the corner, and I said, Morgan, just book it into the cafe. And I kept kind of looking over my shoulder because we have a fair distance in between us now. And shortly after, they gave up, and they all hopped in a van and drove off. So they knew it was a failed attempt. I was just super annoyed with the whole situation.
That, like, the stuff they sprayed on us was all over our backs.
Yeah, once we got in the cafe,
there was a lot of it. So we're in the bathroom just cleaning this stuff off of us and just like thinking about what had just happened. And honestly, just thankful that I had read about it beforehand because I don't know what we would have done like had we not known. We would have just been confused and they might have made it off with our bags.
And what we found out was a few weeks later when we met some Canadians on the hike we were at, the exact same story and situation happened to them, except they didn't know about it and they were robbed blind.
Yeah. Their first day there, got their passports stolen, their IDs, their money, the cell phone, like everything that you need. So they were like trying to figure out how to get a new passport from the U.S. Embassy before they could travel home.
Canadian, but yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Canadian Embassy.
Yeah. So just an unfortunate situation like what stems from a larger problem in the country, which I do eventually want to get to. If there's a part 2 that ever comes out to this podcast, well, I will want to talk more about the history of the country and dive into some of the political issues that are ongoing there, is there's just high levels of poverty, especially in Quito. Generally, in the past 20 years, Ecuador has been looked at as a safe country for travelers, but crime is increasing because of poverty, extremely bad economy, and people just are poor. So it's a thing that we recognize that we don't have, like, that their situation is worse than ours, and it sucks to get robbed and to be on that end of it. But if you're aware, like we were lucky enough to be in that situation, you just kind of get out and you move on with it, because they don't want any real trouble. They just want to steal your stuff and make some money. So it sucks on both ends, all the way around, that people have to do that, or that people are resorting to that as their method of income, because they will make way more money doing that than working a terrible job. So it's just like a symptom of a bigger issue, and lucky for us, we didn't have to be the result of actually getting robbed. Thankfully, Morgan did enough research that we got out of there, and it didn't really sway our perspective of the country as a whole.
No.
We did have a general, more of a odd feeling in Quito than we did in any other capital city that we've ever had, just because it was so big and spread out. But for the 5 days or 6 days that we were there, it just seemed like nothing was going on.
Yeah, I mean, the area we were staying in was like supposed to be, I don't know, from what I read, like, oh, this is one of the tourist areas to stay, and there was like nobody there. I mean, there were, but there wasn't. I don't know how to explain it. Like, it was super.
Restaurants were closed.
Yeah, restaurants were all closed. You would walk blocks down the street and not run into a person. And I'm like, okay, so maybe this thing I read online was outdated. Maybe it used to be the area to stay and now it's not. I don't know. But yeah, it was just different to us because we weren't used to being in a big capital city, and there's just not much going on
outside of the historic district.
When we went to the historic district, of course, there was tons of people and tourists and locals alike. But yeah, I forget what the name of the area we stayed in, but it was just like a weird feeling.
Yeah, we both were like, this is everything's closed. Nobody's walking anywhere.
Yeah, and we couldn't even go to a cafe. We're like, they're all closed. We want some coffee.
As we still are consuming our habits and our addictions. But yeah, so that kind of gave a general uneasy feeling of like, should we be walking here? Because no one else is. Yeah. Why? Like, I feel kind of safe. Yeah. But like I also feel weird because no one else is out on these streets. But no, Quito, outside of like robbery instance, getting sprayed with poop, and just a weird feeling of outside the historic district, it was a pretty neat city to visit.
Yeah.
With having that awareness and understanding of, I don't know what's going on in the city. There's a lot of rich architecture and culture that we did get to experience going to the basilica, the crazy Catholic churches, some of the old colonial buildings, and then also being surrounded in the volcanoes and the mountains. It's super beautiful.
The other uniqueness, I think I'm correct on saying this, it's one of the most well-preserved historic districts in South America, I think, or capital cities maybe. It's one of those. And also one of the highest elevation capital cities, if not the highest in South America.
We're stretching our memory here.
I know, I'm stretching it, but it's something along those lines. So
so don't let that story sway you from Ecuador if you're thinking about visiting. It's things that you should know, especially if you're going to the capital cities. But what we really, really enjoyed was the natural beauty in the small towns in Ecuador. Incomparable to so many other places, because the moment you go to these smaller towns, everybody's super friendly. You don't feel unsafe at all. The crime's low. There's much more of a local community aspect of the way people act. And then just the natural beauty, the mountains, the volcanoes.
Yeah, the one thing we were unaware of going into Ecuador is actually how many volcanoes are in this tiny little country. I forget the number, but it's like
hundreds, right?
Yeah, or in the 70s or something. Okay. We can look it up later, plop it in there, but there's a lot of volcanoes.
Now I have to do post-editing work. No, go on.
That's all I was going to say. I just wanted to say that there's a ton of volcanoes there, and we didn't know that. Like we said, we just kind of went into Ecuador not knowing much about it. It's super underrated for a country as a whole for tourism, and like we were honestly just kind of blown away by the natural beauty there.
After spending 5 or 6 weeks there, we were left feeling like this was one of our top experiences of hiking, continuously hiking every other day, every day, going out doing 6, 7, 8 miles. We were fit, hiking at 10, 11, 12,000 feet every day, doing 6 to 10 miles every day. It was we just wanted to keep going. For example, I guess Ecuador, with being on the equator and the high elevation, outside of Quito, the next town was, where did we go? Otovalo. And another one that you read about.
Yeah.
Kind of a little tourist town that's known for, this is where backpackers go to get out of the city and experience some.
So there's really like 2 things in Otovalo that people go there for. And there's the Otovalo market, which is supposed to be a more authentic Ecuadorian market where you can buy souvenirs.
As authentic as you can get in 2024, but
yeah. I mean, we went to it. It was fine. But the amazing thing to go to Otovalo for is Laguna de Cuicococha. It's a big volcano crater lake, and it's just beautiful. So that was the main reason we wanted to go there.
Yeah.
And that's the main reason most people go there.
If I do recall, on the short that I made, you rated the Cuicococha hike a 10 out of 10.
I think so.
Which is a hike around the caldera of an active volcano where the lake is plopped in the center, and you walk around the top of the lake, which is the center of the top of the volcano.
The hike is the rim, so you just do like a giant rim hike around this. I don't remember the mileage on it, but it was pretty extensive, but it wasn't that hard. There wasn't too much elevation change, a little bit, because some of it went up, but it was just breathtaking view the whole way, because you're getting almost constant views of this crater lake with beautiful blue water, and in the center there's like a little island essentially, and that's how it got its name, because it's Cui for guinea pig, and the island in the center kind of resembles the shape of a guinea pig. So that's
I'd believe it. Yeah. I don't know if I would have pointed it out, but I believe it.
Right. Yeah. I don't think I would have been like, oh, that's a guinea pig. But once you read it, and you're like, oh yeah, it kind of looks like a guinea pig, I guess. So yeah, that's one of the main reasons. And I would take that trip again. It was out of the way to go to Otovalo. Like we went, I guess we went east, and the rest of the routes were all south. So we actually went to Otovalo, got a bus back to Quito, and then did the rest of our route. But I would say it was worth it.
Yeah, for sure. We were debating about doing some more traveling further northeast that way past Otovalo, but we kept reading that the border of Colombia and Ecuador is where some higher crime occurs because of trafficking with the narco state and some of the gangs, and just the borders are a little more unsecure in the South American countries. So we avoid those areas just to not put ourselves in any of those situations.
Yeah. Also for timing for our trip, we just decided let's just head south, because everything else we were doing was kind of in a direct,
more of a loop.
Yeah, more of a route straight down. So we were just like, okay, we're glad we did Otovalo, but then we headed south.
And we stayed in the Andean mountain range for the majority of the trip. And we went back south of Quito, and we went on the other famous trek, which I also agree is a 10 out of 10, the Quilotoa Trek.
Oh my gosh. So amazing.
Yes.
That was, Actually, if Cuicococha was a 10 out of 10, this one's probably like a 12 out of 10.
It doesn't work for math.
Okay. But anyways, yeah, 3-day trek, and there's like hostels along the way. So there's like a whole route already set out. And then you just show up at these hostels. You have a place to sleep, pay for it, obviously. And then you do the route the next day to the next hostel. And you end at the Quilotoa Lake, which is another volcano caldera filled with a bright blue lake. And oh my gosh, the valleys we were going through, there was just so much green.
This trek embodies the Andean mountain of Ecuador.
Yeah.
Everything about it, of what you get to walk through, is the picturesque versions of how Ecuador should be viewed from the world.
Yes.
Is like you said, it has valleys, it has the mountains, it has wildlife.
The first 2 days of the trek, you hike down into a valley, and then you hike back up the other side, and then the hostel's at the top. The next day, you hike down into the next valley and then back up. So it's a bit of a strenuous hike, but so worth it, and just
you're left with the
unimaginable beauty.
On the third day, the magnificent lake.
So then the third day is mostly up because you're hiking to the top of where this volcano crater is at. And yeah, like you said,
words can't describe it. That's why I will just put the videos and photos over top of us of showing this beautiful place. And it just was breathtaking and cold. It was super windy.
Oh my God. Yeah. So cold. It was actually, once you got there, you wanted to sit there and enjoy it, but it was so cold.
Just shivering.
My hands were like going numb and burning, and it was like, okay, we need to keep moving.
Yep.
But if it wasn't for the cold, you could literally just sit there all day and just look out at this lake. It's so pretty.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's so hard to even describe. So I'll just try to put some photos over top of all of this, because beautiful. And right directly beside us, we, again, like this trip was hiking, more hiking. Next day we got back to Cotopaxi. Is Cotopaxi the town as well? No.
It's a lot of Kunga.
Oh yeah, a lot of Kunga. After we partnered with our hotel friends, we had some free stays after taking some photos and video for them. We're going to hike Cotopaxi, which is the most active volcano in Ecuador.
Yeah, and actually it was showing activity while we were there. Not like it was gonna
dangerous levels.
Yeah, because they wouldn't have let us hike it if it was. So, and also we probably wouldn't have gone there if it was. We're good about checking that stuff. But oh my gosh, yeah. So we had to get a guide to go do that hike. And
talk about being cold. We were. They have a glacier at the top of.
Yes, they actually weren't letting people hike all the way to the top of it because of the activity. So we did like a partial.
Yeah, a route up the side of the volcano, and we hiked up to the glacier base. I don't know how close it was to the top, but it was a good little hike of just seeing this massive volcano. And then experiencing it and seeing the valley below, being in this cold weather on this hot summer day, everything was just messing with your senses of what should have been.
Yeah. We were at a super high elevation, so it was hard to breathe. And just walking on the volcano ash is a completely different type of terrain to walk on. So I would argue that it was one of the harder hikes that I've done.
Yeah. There might have been a little extra variable for you because this is before you found out you were pregnant, but you were pregnant at this point too.
I was actually pregnant for all of this that we've been talking about, but we didn't know it yet. So there was a feeling there, but we didn't know it. So.
And Morgan said that we got a guide for hiking Cotopaxi. So I just wanted to give Luis a shout out. He was a super friendly guide. He was talking about Ecuador and his experience growing up in and some of the earlier hardships occurring in like the 80s and 90s, and seeing it kind of rebound and get better. And now he was kind of saying how he's a little bummed out of seeing it go back in reverse. He was kind of hoping that Ecuador would keep getting better and better, and he didn't seem too optimistic on the future of the country. And we were more than happy to get to know him and pay for his services, because you don't need to get guides for all these hikes. It's smarter to.
Yes.
But then also you get to help out people, and
and you get a more personal experience. They know things about the land. You learn from it too. Yeah. So it's a win-win, really.
Yep. They explain a little bit more about the volcano, the eruptions that have occurred in the past. They pick you up. You don't have to. It helps you out getting to the locations, getting into the national park. So if you are thinking about going.
And he gave me his gloves when my hands got cold. So
yeah, he sacrificed his hands for Morgan's warmth, because we were just two dumb tourists who don't take gloves hiking. I
had gloves. They just weren't warm enough gloves for my cold little hands.
Yeah. So shout out Luis. If I can recall the company that we reached out to, I'll just put their information in the video as well, so people can reach out if they're thinking they're going to do a hike in Cotopaxi. Our next big move on our road trip through the country was Banos. Still in the Andean mountains, still green, still volcanoes, but there is an exception to this area, which is
the waterfalls. So there's a waterfall route there. I think there's like 7 waterfalls on this route. And the main thing to do there is to rent a bike, and you bike this road, and then you get to stop off at all the waterfalls. You can hike down to each one if you want. You can stop at the overlooks and decide to go on to the next one. But, I mean, it's a beautiful road. And the best part about it is it's all downhill. And on the way back, you can choose to pay a few bucks and...
Did you say the best part about it?
Yeah.
The best part is you don't have to ride your bike back.
You don't have to ride all uphill on the way back, because there's a truck and you can pay a few bucks and they will load your bike up and take you back into town. The
best part about seeing these magnificent waterfalls is that you don't have to ride your bike back.
Anyways, I was grateful for it. So.
The best part. Not riding the bikes. It's the best part, is not having to ride the bike.
The most famous of the 7 waterfalls, though, is probably the Diablo. I was trying to remember if that's what it was called. It wasn't like Del Diablo.
It might have been, yeah.
Anyways, the Diablo waterfall is insanely beautiful, and the main one people want to go to. So,
massive.
Yeah, and there's like a neat hike to it, and then there's like steps that take you down like right to the waterfall. You can practically feel the waterfall. You get wet from it.
Yeah, it's similar feeling to, like, I think the Niagara Falls on the Canadian side. Have you been to the Canadian side?
I have, as a kid.
There's like a tunnel, and you can come out like right beside Niagara Falls below or as it's going down the cliff. And this is a similar setup where you have the walkway and the falls is right beside you.
Yeah, it's not the size of Niagara.
No.
Not that like magnificence, but it's still a beautiful, beautiful waterfall. So
yeah,
highly recommend. And the bike route is beautiful. I mean, and if you're up to it and you want to bike back uphill, you can do that too.
But it was only like $2.
Yeah, it was really like $2. So $2 a person, I think, to load up in this truck. So yeah, we took that route, and
it was a neat little town too that was built up. The Banos town was a nice little destination tourist spot with a lot of
they're built up kind of for like adventure tourism. Like there's other things you can do there, like whitewater rafting, I think, and different things like that.
But we didn't do any of that. We just did the biking, but I do recall now, this was the first area that we felt like, oh, this is a tourist destination. This was the first place that we saw a lot of foreigners outside of the Quilotoa hiking trek. but like the first town where it's like, oh, there's not just local people here.
There were a lot of tourists in Banos.
Yes. Yeah, we just did the waterfalls. We biked, and then they're also known for the hot springs.
Oh, yeah.
And they were legit hot. The hottest hot springs I've ever been in. The one was awesome because
she's awake.
We have a little baby girl who's awake. This will be fitting. She'll make a quick appearance for her story of her being born, or her finding out her pregnancy.
We can finish.
Okay.
This section.
And so yeah, some hot springs of I don't remember the degrees. It was like a hot tub, 104.
Yeah, there were actually different levels. So there were like 3 different pools, and like each one got a little hotter. So you could go to your comfort level or start in the cooler one and work your way to the hottest one. Yeah. And then they also had like a super cold one down by the hottest one. So you could do a shock.
Yeah, you go back and forth between a cold plunge and a hot tub.
Yeah.
And so Banos, waterfalls, hot springs, built nice developed little town with restaurants, other outdoor activities. Great stop along the way.
Yes. Banos was the first place. No, actually, Latacunga was the first place we got turned on to going to Puyo, which is where we headed next.
To be continued.
We continued with the baby. Did she lay back down?
She looks like she might have fell back asleep. So, as Morgan's examining this, and we might still be sleeping, Puyo is our next destination. We were leaving the Andean Mountains and going to the Amazon destination section of Ecuador.
Yeah.
We had more grand Amazonian plans, but we just got kind of the tip of the iceberg because we found out Morgan was pregnant shortly after this.
And we had actually not planned on going to Puyo at all. We had kind of looked at it and we're like, it looks like skippable, I guess. Like we want to do a more, a bigger Amazon trip. This is just on like the outer edge of the Amazon. But then talking to Karen, the hotel host we stayed with in Latacunga, she was like, no, you got to go to Puyo. It's actually beautiful and it's awesome. So we're like, all right, we'll add it. It's not that far out of the way.
Yeah.
So we went, and I think we're both glad we did.
Yeah. For one, it was our most Amazon rainforest experience of our trip, and we didn't get to do the larger plans in the Amazon that we wanted to. So that worked out great to at least get some exposure to just seeing that vastness of, even though we were only on the edge of the rainforest, it was still higher elevation where you could see over into the rainforest and see the dense woods. We did some smaller hikes. We swam through some nice little water rivers with our our guide right after finding what kind of snake?
Oh my gosh, there was like snake eggs.
Not a boa constrictor, but what's the other? An anaconda.
Yeah.
He said these are anaconda eggs he found. And then
he was like kind of like, oh, there's snake eggs here. And
let's not stay here. Yeah. And then shortly after, let's go into the river.
And then he was like, it's fine. There's no snakes in the water. I still don't believe that. But somehow he got me in that water and we swam to a little waterfall. I was nervous about it the entire time, but we didn't die, so it's okay.
Those things work out sometimes. I don't know what else to say about it.
Yeah. He was a nice guide too. I'm glad we got a guide. I mean, really, we wouldn't have been able to do that trek without a guide because
it's not really marked trails.
It's not marked, and it's easy to get turned around and lost in a rainforest. So I would not recommend just going out and doing a rainforest hike on your own because it's so dense, and then you'd get turned around. So
this part of the country also it seemed like a big turning point. They're trying to deal with rainforest preservation with also just modernization development. We noticed walking on the hike that there was a part of the rainforest that was actively being cut down for farming. Do you remember this? Mm-hmm. And you could actually see that of, hey, some small deforestation to make some agricultural economy for the area. Again, how do you criticize from the outside? But it was interesting to see because Puyo is not an easy town to get to, but it was kind of a booming little town with people everywhere. When we got on the bus to get to the actual rainforest area, the city central, it was fairly large. And
I mean, and it was basically us on the bus with a bunch of local people just going home from work for the day or whatever.
Students or who live out of town. Yeah. And so just kind of fascinating to witness that in person of like, it's very much, you can see that the city is not in present 21st century of what you might consider the modern world. But they're in the midst of their growth and trying to decide and figure out what direction they're going to go in to grow and have a better way of living, or modern way of living, I should say. And we met on our hike outside of the city. There's still culture there that they embrace a lot of their indigenous heritage still, where there's smaller communities who are still living in remote, kind of segregated, not intentionally segregated, but isolated from, who are probably rejecting in some sense the modern world and embracing it wasn't Incan, but Incan adjacent indigenous heritage, because they were all still speaking Quechua, yeah. The indigenous language. That was their language first before Spanish. So a lot of development occurring right in front of our eyes, and you could it's stepping back in time 30, 40 years very easily to see. So yeah, as Mike and Morgan said, we were very glad that we went there.
You go there and you can visit these little communities, I guess you would call them. And so we got to go to one of them, and I don't know, they kind of put on a little bit of a show for us. Like, oh, this is like,
they played it up.
Yeah. What we used to do. I mean, they don't completely live like that anymore. Like, they had us eat like these little grub worm things. And I did that too. Before I knew I was pregnant, they got me to eat a worm somehow, but that's okay.
Yeah. They played
they killed a snake.
Yeah, they played up some of like the gimmicky stuff, a little bit of like, oh, this is it. And it's like, this is how your culture used to be, but no, for the most part. And they
probably do it sometimes still, like during festivals, rituals, things like that. But like, you go there and they're wearing clothes just like we are. Yep. So it's like, they're not completely away from the modern world.
They're farming, they're raising fish. Remember our guide, they had the whole fish farm.
Yep.
So yeah, it's like I said, it's a mix of the modern world and the old world.
Okay, and I have to go pick up our daughter because she is now actually awake. But you wanted to talk about the
I'll continue on the cacao story.
With Naomi.
A funny thing that happened was we found a small cacao farm to go visit and see how they make cacao, chocolate. And it's just like, okay, this seems pretty neat. So we rode some bicycles there, and we met the host, Ruben. He's just a small local farmer, and he's like, yeah, come on in. Let me show you the process of grinding the cacao beans down, cooking them and grinding them down and making chocolate. We went through the whole process, but Ruben was giving out very weird vibes. I don't know if it was the right word, feelings towards me specifically, where he was asking if I was a father, if we had kids. And I was like, no, we don't have any kids. We're not planning on having any kids. And soon. And he said, oh, okay. And then he's like giving me hugs. He says, next time I see you, you're going to, hi, Naomi. How's your nap?
He said, next time he sees you, you're going to.
Next time he's like, you're going to be a father. And he's like giving me hugs when we're leaving. And he had some sense of awareness or manifestation, because 2 or 3, 4 days later.
On the bus ride back from Puyo, we had to go back through Banos and then down. I was feeling sick. Actually, I was a little bit in Banos too. So like we were like kind of thinking about it. And then I was feeling really sick on that bus route. And we were like, okay, we need to give in and buy this pregnancy test because there's been a few signs now. And so we got to Riobamba, our next location, and we did the pregnancy test. And I guess I'll tell
what's the full story?
The full story here. So I looked at the box and I was like, okay, 1 line is negative, 2 is positive. Left the box out, the directions out of the bathroom. And so I took the test and 1 line showed up. So I was like, oh, okay, it's negative. And I come out and tell Jake, oh, it's negative. And he does kind of a sigh of relief, like, okay. He goes in the bathroom and looks at it and he's like, what are you talking about? This is positive. And I was like, what? No, it's not. There was only 1 line. Well, I failed to realize that there was a control line and a test line. And it was the control that had to be the 1 line to be negative. Well, the line that showed up was the test line. And a few minutes later, another faint line showed up. So it was positive. And
a lot of mixed feelings of emotional roller coaster. Up and down, not knowing what's going to happen. We're not working. We're in the middle of Ecuador. We're not ready to be parents.
Yeah, not that we weren't excited about it, but it was just timing. I was like, we haven't had jobs in 2 years. We don't even know what we're doing tomorrow. How can we prepare for this? So, yeah, like you said, a roller coaster of emotions, and we quickly did a change of plans while we were there in Riobamba.
This is the change of not extending our Amazonian trip and figuring out a path back home.
Yeah, so we decided, well, we're already in Ecuador. We're going to finish our travel plans in Ecuador. We had one of the main things we wanted to go to Ecuador for was seeing the whales on the coast because we were there in June. And it's the best time. So
we're not leaving before
we are not leaving before we see these whales. We've been looking forward to this. So we finished that, canceled the Amazons, canceled the idea of going to Bolivia and Guatemala. Those were some just plans in our minds. We didn't have anything purchased. We don't do that in advance. We do it as we go. So thankfully, nothing like that. We're just like, okay, cross out those ideas. We'll finish Ecuador, and then we're going to go back to Brazil for a while before going home.
And we wanted to see all of our Brazilian friends and family, and it kind of just seemed like a poetic ending to the 2-year journey because it's where we started. It's why we left our jobs, and it worked out to be like
we came full circle
to go full circle and buy those tickets to end our last few weeks in Brazil.
Yeah, that's right. Did you know you were in Brazil?
She's like, why are we sitting down and not playing?
So yeah, a big change came there.
And then we're left here with this little girl. Right, Naomi? You changed our lives forever.
Say hello. What is this thing, huh? Oh, you're going to eat it? Yummy.
And so we needed to be a little more serious with trying to figure out what to do with finding out Morgan was pregnant. We went to Cuenca. Ironically so, Cuenca was one of our most favorite South American cities that we visited. Just insanely beautiful city. We normally don't say that about more of the outdoors experiences.
Like, we want to be on the hikes. We want to be where the volcanoes, the mountains, lakes are at. Anything on those lines. Cities are like, yeah, we'll go check them out for a day or two. But
we said if we had to move to a South American city, Cuenca, Ecuador would be on one of the top choices.
Oh, goodness.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to try wrapping this up a little faster because little girl doesn't want to sit here anymore.
We have a little wiggle worm, so it might stem from all of the hiking we did while she was in my womb. So I don't know.
Yeah, that's quite very possible. We were on the go in Ecuador, and now she wants to be on the go every day. And when we were in Cuenca, we wanted to make sure that we were a little more prepared and had some plans figured out. So we figured out you were roughly 7 weeks pregnant, and we booked scheduled an appointment at the hospital.
We got our first ultrasound there, and that was like the moment where it was like, okay, this is real. There's a little baby bouncing around in there.
Heartbeat.
Yep, heard the heartbeat.
And it said, yep, this is real. That at-home test was correct. And then our lives were turned upside down because we had to change all of our plans, but not too much.
Yeah.
We had to finish our seeing the whales. That was goal number 1. We did some more hikes in Cuenca. We went to the Cajas National Park, hiked there, and then we made our way to the coast. And the coast of Ecuador was much more of a different pace. You get more of the beach life. We kind of relaxed a little bit. We slowed down the pace. We enjoyed the sand, sitting on the ocean, swimming in the ocean, and just kind of traveling up the coast a little bit.
The areas we were in were like super chill and relaxed. But interestingly, talking to a lot of people when we were more inland, the coast more northern is dangerous. A lot of people were telling us not to go there. I mean, the areas we were in were fine. They were nice. But yeah, this more northern cities, people were like, I wouldn't go there. They're getting more and more unsafe. Guayaquil we had to pass through, and multiple people told us not to stay in Guayaquil. Yeah.
So. And we stayed in Montanita alone.
In Puerto Lopez.
And Puerto Lopez was our port to go see the whales.
Yes.
And is that where we met Carlos too?
What was the name of the town? We went from Puerto Lopez to Machalilla.
Oh, Machalilla.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was just north of Puerto Lopez.
Yeah, just a little bit.
So Puerto Lopez, Port Lopez, a lot of boating area. This is where they set up a tourist and location for, hey, we have a lot of the boats leave here to go see the whales because the humpbacks come to Ecuador for their migration to have their babies in the warmer water in the summer. And it did not disappoint. We've been wanting to see humpback whales for years and years, and this was a great opportunity to go see them in the wild. And them breaching all over the place. We had one encounter where it camped right beside the boat, but in the distance you kept seeing whales. When we went swimming off of the island and I was diving down, you could hear the whales talking and singing below the water.
We got some beautiful breaches from the whales, one especially where we only got one up close where it completely jumped out of the water and made a big splash, and I somehow caught it on my camera super fast because it was hard to actually try to get photos or videos.
You never knew where they were coming.
You didn't know, yeah. It might come up in one spot and then all of a sudden it's way over somewhere else. So, yeah, amazing. And we went out twice. We went out 2 times to go see the whales. The only time I actually got sick during my pregnancy was on the boat.
You puked up her peanut butter and jelly over the side.
Combination of the rocking of the waves and the pregnancy. So, yeah. And I wanted to bring up, because I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, we went to the Poor Man's Galapagos. And this is where we took off to go there. What was it called again? Isla La Plata.
Yeah, Isla La Plata.
So we did that, and there's a lot of the same wildlife on this island as you see in the Galapagos.
Mommy's talking about her island.
So that's why it's called the Poor Man's Galapagos. It's a lot cheaper to go here than to go to the Galapagos, and you get to see a lot of the wildlife that you would see on the Galapagos Islands. We saw the blue-footed boobies. I don't remember the birds. They had like frigid birds. They had like this big red thing on their neck, and there was something else that we saw. I don't remember.
Stretching my memory.
Yeah. Anyways, it was very neat to go there. We're glad we went there and didn't have to spend the exuberant amount of money. Galapagos would be awesome, don't get me wrong, and there's even more crazy wildlife there, but this is what we made work. So.
But we could afford.
Yes. And had time for.
And just a quick note on that Machalicia. That was the last Ecuador podcast I released where we had a conversation with Carlos and his plans for helping out their community and doing some coral reef restoration. Yes. So if you're interested in that podcast, check out that one as well. But in summary, that's our 6 weeks in Ecuador. We scooted out of there to make our way back towards the U.S. and surprise our families with the news.
Yes, we didn't tell anybody while we were there. We're like, it's going to be more exciting to tell everybody in person. So we had our little secret we were carrying around with us for a while.
And that was Ecuador. Like we said, it was awesome experience. If anybody's thinking about Ecuador, don't overlook it. Give it a chance and go experience some of this natural beauty.
And if you love hiking and you're into hiking volcanoes, mountains, beautiful lakes,
this is your spot.
It's your spot for sure.
And if you want surfing, beach life, less busy areas, nice little spot too. It's also your spot. And yeah, it's a super cool country. It's so tiny. So much variability to it. Like I said, hopefully the future of Ecuador gets better. They can figure out some of their issues with the corruption and economic concerns, but the world is a tough place and we don't know how it will end up. But we know that the local people there are full of heart and love for their country and the natural beauty. And if you can appreciate that, then they're more than willing to share their country with you. The pricing comparison is similar to South American countries.
Yeah.
If you're budgeting.
They use the U.S. dollar currency, so that makes it nice for conversion. If you're from the U.S., it's easy to understand what things are costing you. Yeah,
it's similar South American rates, a little cheaper than the U.S. pricing, probably. U.S. pricing is gone up, but I'm sure pricing there has gone up there as well.
Yeah.
With them being tied to the U.S. dollar. But yeah, Ecuador, awesome country, awesome experience.
And awesome memories where we found out about this little peanut.
Yeah, everybody was giving us crap with the last podcast we did talking. And we didn't even...
Yeah, we talked about becoming parents, and we didn't even give Naomi a spot to shine. So here she is.
And what it is
so happy.
A year flies by. This is why we're talking about it a year later. Time just goes by.
It's okay.
So with that, thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Again, this is Paper Mountains Podcast. Wherever you enjoy your podcast, subscribe, and be sure to be ready for the next episode. It will come eventually, I swear. I just don't know when. And thanks for listening. And if Ecuador's not on your list right now, go enjoy any parts of the world because there's so much to offer.
Say thank you for watching.
Cheers.